Hey guys, this is John Arbister from Form.IO. This is the second lesson in the series about how to build an app using Form.IO with AngularJS. In the last lesson, we got the app all set up and ready to get authentication forms put in. And in this lesson, we're going to learn about how to use ngFormioHelper to get the auth all set up for us. All of the code is available in the GitHub repo that I've linked below in the description. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started. First, let's start building our app.js page a little bit. Remember that we were asked in the Yeoman Builder if we wanted any sort of routing system, and we chose UI router. Let's go ahead and get that going first. Let's inject this into our Angular app by putting UI.router in single or double quotes in the square brackets inside of our initial app declaration. Next, let's create an Angular config module that takes one parameter, a callback function. And inside that function, let's inject the parameters $stateProvider and $URLRouterProvider. These are going to allow us to create those states and routes that we will need. Before we create any of those states, though, let's create what is going to catch any unknown URL requests and redirect them back to wherever we tell them to go. Type in the code $URLRouterProvider.otherwise, parentheses, single bracket, /. This basically says if someone tries to go to any URL that I don't know exists, redirect them to this URL. Next, let's create our home state. The method that we're going to use, $stateProvider.state, takes two arguments. The first argument is a string of what we want the state to be called, and the second argument is an object with a number of different possible keys you can use. To see a list of possible keys, check out UI Router's docs page, which I have linked in the description below. For the sake of our tutorial, we're going to stick to just a couple for now. The first one will be the URL, which we will just put a /. The second will be template URL, to which we will put views /home.html. Since we're thinking about it, let's go ahead and create that now. Now that we did that, let's go ahead and test to see if this is now working. Let's go to home.html and put home in a pair of H2s. Great, that works. Now the fun part. Let's get this auth created. Navigate to Form.IO in your web browser and log in. If you haven't created an account yet, go ahead and do that. It's free. Once you get to the project page, go ahead and create a default project. The first place it will take you is to the overview page. From here, click API in the left sidebar. It will take you to your project's API page. On the top, you will see the word endpoint just under default. Let's go ahead and copy that URL because we're going to need it in just a moment. Let's go back to the app.js page and do a couple of things really quick. First though, let's open up the terminal and navigate to the project directory. From here, we're going to type in bower install --save ng-formio ngFormioHelper. You'll eventually get stopped and asked which version of Angular-Bootstrap that you want, as well as which version of Angular you would like. Choose the most recent ones, which at the time of this recording were 1.3.1 and 1.5.5 respectively. That should finish the install, and we should be ready to move on from here. If you had to stop your server from running in the terminal to install Bower, no worries, just run gulp serve again to get it going. Let's go back to the app.js page and inject Formio and ngFormioHelper into our Angular app declaration, so we can use them in the config module. Inside the config module callback, let's put in FormioProvider and FormioAuthProvider, which are a part of ngFormioHelper. So inside the config callback, let's write FormioProvider.setBaseURL. SetBaseURL is telling ngFormioHelper where your project is on Form.IO so it knows where to find things. The second thing that we're going to do is tell ngFormioHelper if we want to require people to be authorized to get past a login page, which in our case is auth.html. Seeing as though we are creating a student admissions page, that seems like it would be a good idea. So let's type Formio auth provider dot set force auth with an argument of true. The set force auth method takes a single Boolean argument, where if you put true, like we did, it basically says that if someone goes to a page that exists, but they are not authenticated, it will redirect them back to the login page. The next thing that we're going to do is use the Formio auth provider dot set states method. This method takes two arguments which are both strings. The first argument takes a string of which state we start at before we are authenticated. Then the second argument is where we want to be redirected to once we press submit and are authenticated. In our case, let's do auth.studentLogin and home, respectively. Let's talk about a quick side note though, because that probably didn't make sense. Behind the scenes, ngFormioHelper automatically creates a state called auth that will be our initial login area. That is where setForceAuth will redirect us to from anywhere once we try to go on the app, unless we are authenticated, assuming we set the setForceAuth method to true. You will see what I'm talking about in a second. So next we are going to register the auth states using a method called FormioAuthProvider.register, which takes three arguments. The first argument is the name of the nested auth state. The second is going to be the resource that the auth is going to check against. And the third argument is going to be the URL path. We are going to register three things because we created three login register views. The first one will be student register, which we will tie to the user resource, and we will create the path /register. The next one we will do is the student login, which we will tie to the user resource as well, and we will call that URL login/student. The last one will be for the admin login, which we will tie to the admin resource and create the same URL as the last one, login/admin. So there's one more thing we have to do. We have to put an Angular run method below the config method. And basically what we're going to do in there is we're going to initialize all of the Formio auth providers. That way we can make the authentication work. Now let's get the forms in there. Start by navigating to Form.IO in the browser and go to the project that we're making. Let's click the Forms option on the left side menu and click Embed. Now let's copy that directive towards the top of the page so we can use it in our app. Go back to your studentregister.html page and paste that in there. Now let's save that and go back to our live app, refresh the page, and click on Student Register. Looks like the form is showing up. Awesome. Let's go do that with the other two forms that we need. Let's go back to the Form.io and back to the Forms page. Then next to user login, click the embed button, copy the directive again, paste it in the student.login.html page. Once you do that, repeat the process for the admin login and put it in the admin.login.html page. Once we do all of that, all of the forms show up and are connected to the project. Go back to your project in Form.io, then click the Edit button next to the user register. Let's add a full name field and a verify password field. Start by dragging a text field into the form, giving it a label and a placeholder of full name. Click the green Save button. Next, let's drag a password field into the form below the password and call it verify password. Type in this text. Valid equals input triple equals double curly brackets password. We are saying that if the input equals the same value of this password field, it is valid. Click Save when you're done, and then click the Save form after that closes. Let's go back to our app in the browser and see what happens. Refresh the page when you get that and click on the Student Registration tab. Our form is updated. Awesome. That's one of the powerful things about Form.io. You can make a change to your forms in real time without having to restart your server, which is incredibly powerful. Okay, so let's finish this lesson up by creating a user and verifying that our login works. Remember, after we log in, if it works, it will take us to the home state. So let's fill the register form in and click submit. Once we do that, it will automatically log us in and take us to the home page. Great, so that works. Let's try logging out and logging back in again. Great, that works as well. Let's see what happened when we clicked the register button. So let's go back to the project page on Form.IO and click on the action button next to user register. When that comes up, we will see that two things happened. The first thing is that it saved the submission into our user resource, then it logged us in. If we go back out to our project's form page again and we clicked the actions button next to the user login form, you will see just the login. Click where it says login. If you look down at where it says action settings, you will see that we sent the login back to the user resource and then verified it against the existing values. Since it was all the same, it let us through. So let's end the lesson here. That pretty much describes ngFormioHelper and how to get started using it. In the next lesson, we're going to show you how to use ngFormio Grid to display data and manipulate it. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and feel free to leave us any questions that you have in the comment section below. See you in the next lesson.